Welcome back to PS Weekly, the sound of the New York City school system. I'm Associate Producer Zana Halili. We're starting Season 3 with a new mayor and public schools chancellor, and with that comes a lot of campaign promises and possible change up on the table. But this new administration seems committed to giving students a seat at the table, including student journalists like us. A former teacher and superintendent, Kamar Samuels has begun his tenure as chancellor with listening sessions across the 5 boroughs. A few weeks ago, our student reporters had the opportunity to interview Chancellor Samuels before one of these listening sessions, held at the Queens Innovation Center in Long Island City. So, here's how it'll go. You'll hear one of our PS Weekly reporters ask the chancellor a question, and then Chancellor Samuels' response. Afterwards, you'll hear our reporters' reactions from our debrief back at our office. Our conversation with the chancellor has been condensed for the purposes of our podcast, and you'll hear our reporters give their own analysis of the chancellor's answers along the way. But if you'd like to hear the full, unedited version of the interview, you can find it at our YouTube channel. We hope you enjoy.
I've been doing school visits, and I've gotten a lot of tough questions from kids, so I don't expect you guys to disappoint.
So we actually started with some softball questions, just to, ease into things.
Hello, my name is Jasper Malorca. I attend the High School of Art and Design. I was wondering if you want to play a little game with us. You could say one word to these fun rapid-fire questions.
All right.
What's one word to describe the NYC school system?
Very good.
Very good?
Too. Great.
That's a good 2 words, though.
All right.
What was your favorite subject in school growing up?
Math.
Math? Yeah, that's a great one. This one's a little hard. What's your favorite borough?
Ooh, that is hard. The Bronx.
The Bronx?
I lived in Manhattan, but I love the Bronx.
What's your favorite subway line?
Oh, wow. The 4 train.
Yankees or Mets?
Yeah, tough. Yankees.
All right, this is the last one. What is your deli order?
Ooh, bacon, egg, and cheese.
Great answers.
But then we did get into some more serious questions.
My name is Raylene, and I attend the Brooklyn Institute for Liberal Arts. I'm a junior, and I know that school integration is a priority for you, and that you've tackled it in the form of school mergers. So my school, Bila, recently merged with the school in our building, which was the School for Human Rights. But I've noticed that our school communities haven't really blended together. And a lot of people, my classmates, have, expressed that they have felt isolated. So if you continue to do integration with NYC schools in the form of school mergers, what would you consider a program that you would invest in and create that you feel would stop further isolation or cause deeper divides within school communities?
That is such a great question. Yeah, so I've worked on school integration efforts in a couple of ways, but the main things I think about is mergers, because when we look at where the school system is right now, especially with declining enrollment, we see that some schools are too small, right? And so if some schools are too small, it means that they don't necessarily have the robust programs and resources for young people. And so I think mergers can be a tool in doing that. But in order for it to be a true merger, it means that both schools have to look at the things that they do really, really well and then merge those things together. And so you get more than what was there before. You get a real holistic view of the school. And to be honest, that requires real strong work on the part of the leadership of the school and to include families and young people in the process. There are some really tried and true examples of how you can engage in a merger so that it limits the feeling of loss and it ensures that both communities come together.
Thank you.
So that was Chancellor Samuels on school mergers. We played back his answers in our newsroom and had a discussion to analyze his responses.
It's refreshing to hear someone who has like a similar like dialect and accent from people in my community. You don't really see that in like Eric Adams, but I don't know. He didn't really fit the mark. But it's refreshing to hear someone that it has the same dialect to someone from my community or like to my parents.
I thought it was interesting that he was talking about like some schools can be too small and that means you don't get a lot of resources. So I really would like to know what he thinks is like too small of a school. I think there's a benefit to a school being on the smaller side because then people become more accessible and you get to form better relationships with your teachers and your peers.
I thought it was interesting that he said like a true merger is if you have like the best parts of one school and then take that with the best parts of another school and put it together. But I'm wondering like how often that actually happens.
I feel like with BILA, it's gotten better as time has gone on, but initially it just wasn't like that. So I feel like it depends on like the two school communities, especially. So just in my experience, I feel like it does take time, but with a lot of schools, I can see that they just would never get to that point that BILA is at.
I'm Roberto, and on the kind of topic of integration, I go to Hunter College High School, which, although not under your jurisdiction, has a pretty severe lack of diversity. It's less than 5% Black, less than 12% Latina, and less than 17% low income. So I wanted to ask about screened and specialized schools, which kind of have those same inequity problems. You've made a commitment to prioritizing integration and working to like phase out gifted and talented programs, for example, during your time in District 13. So as you're kind of stepping into the role of chancellor, I wanted to ask if you have a citywide policy on integration, and if so, what that like citywide policy would look like.
That's a great question. I think all of the work that I've done on integration really starts with really strong engagement of families, engagement in some cases of students, but mainly communities. And then we come up with ideas, we come up with thoughts together. So in District 3, we did that through working groups. I think people often look at a specialized high schools, which are governed by a state law. And so thinking about how high school screens work, I think we've come a long way as a city where that's concerned. And so when we think about how the groupings work and it's based on grades, not standardized tests, things like that, I think have been like significant steps in the right direction from my perspective. And when it comes to gifted and talented programs, you mentioned District 13. There were a group of parents that were thinking about and beginning to work on the phasing out of gifted and talented programs in District 13 even before I got there. And so when I got there, we worked together to kind of push on the system for doing that. And I think what our mayor has talked about is this idea that if you're going to do selective admissions or some kind of admissions process, it's probably better to start that at third grade rather than kindergarten. That's something I, broadly agree with.
Roberto, what did you think of that response?
I really wanted to ask about specifically like citywide policy, which he didn't really talk about. Like he just said like, oh, we should look at creating a system, which I think is true, but like he doesn't really get to like an actual policy platform. I think probably because the chancellorship is so new. But yeah, like that part of the question I feel like went a little unanswered.
Hello, Chancellor
Hi.
Samuels.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good.
My name is Noah Salas Adam, and I go to Stuyvesant High School. So just shifting focus a little bit, the average New York City public school is 75 years old, which means that many of them are struggling with failing HVAC systems and mold and dust mites even. And schools are also significant contributors to our pollution in the city, the buildings themselves. So I know that Mayor Mamdani outlined his Green Schools for a Healthier New York City plan, which would include renovating 500 schools and having 500 green schoolyards as well. But this comes from a campaign document. So I was wondering what plans you and Mayor Mamdani have now to make this a reality and to make schools greener and also healthier.
Yeah. So we are going to need to build more schools for a host of reasons. One of them being the class size law. We have to meet the need. And since schools are huge around the city, there are, 1,600 schools that are in, something like 1,000 or so buildings. And I think we provide a great opportunity for our city to be greener. And so that's something that we are definitely going to be working on, and I'm sure the mayor would agree that we want to keep that campaign promise to think about how we're going to make our schools greener and do some renovations in the upcoming years and months.
Are there any specific plans in the works right now?
We're going to continue to talk about them to see how. It's still early. I've only been here for 2 months, but that's something that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming weeks and months. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Feel about that answer.
Well, that was not really what I was looking for, but also I wasn't too surprised, to be honest, because he is new. It is a new administration. That was kind of an ambitious question, I guess. But since it is in his campaign, I was hoping there would be at least some sort of follow-up action item maybe. But also he talked about class sizes, which wasn't really what my question was. And I tried to ask a follow-up, but he was like, yeah, no plans right now because it's new, which I guess is fair, but it was a little bit disappointing.
Hi, Chancellor Samuels. My name is Zoe, and I attend Bard High School, Early College, Manhattan. You've addressed this desire or the need for schools to be both mentally safe and physically safe. But I have noticed in my own experience that students are experiencing high levels of stress because of our political climate and just all the things that are going on in the world right now. Whether it's the effects of the 24-hour news cycle or the ICE raids in our communities. And so I was wondering, what is your plan to kind of help students in NYC sort of manage stress in these particular contexts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, the world is stressful. I think, I think adults also struggle with the things that you're talking about. One of the things I've noticed and we're concerned about is, current events often leads to not only stress but bias in school as well. When I first started teaching, it was 2003, and the current event was 9/11, and the bias was Islamophobia. Then we've seen coming all the way through, there were times where there was LGBTQ bias, or we had COVID as the current event, and then we saw a rise in anti-Asian hate. We had October 7th, and we saw a rise in anti-Semitism. And all through that, we have seen anti-Black racism in our city. And so as young people in school navigate these situations, I think, number one, we have to make sure that we have a guidance counselor, a social worker, or access to a mental health clinic in every single school. Number two, we also have to make sure that when we think about our curriculum, when we think about our teachers, that they have resources to help support young people through these challenging times. So for us, we're looking at, of course, or work with facing history on ourselves, or work with making sure our hidden voices resources are available to everyone, making sure that we have our Black Studies curriculum that's in place, and of course our hidden voices has 9 different identities it works through. So that's one, in terms of making sure that our young people feel safe, a sense of belonging in what's happening in school. I think it's important to build our teachers' capacity to handle difficult situations. And then, of course, you're talking about stress and mental health. We think obviously phone usage and social media as a part of that, which is why I supported and implemented the cell phone ban, and I think that has gone very well. And so we're always going to be thinking about ways to continue to help young people navigate this polarized world in some ways that I think you're bringing up, because I think that's a huge part, becoming an empathetic citizen. And I think that's a huge part of what it means to be prepared in the current landscape and prepared for career and college and beyond.
So could we maybe see more of a student voice impact on our curriculum and our schools?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I've visited probably about 30 schools since I started in 2 months. What I take away from, and I'm always heartened by and challenged by too, is the fact that our young people and their voices play a huge part in our school. And when we know that kids feel safe is when we see them being a part of the decision-making process in their school, and when we see them when we see their voice being not only lifted up, but they're lifting up their own voices, right? And so I have a student advisory council. We're starting a multicultural student advisory coalition as well, student coalition as well. And so I am completely committed to this idea and this notion of how do we ensure that student voices are driving our system.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Zoe, what did you think about his answer to your question? I feel like he had a lot to say.
I liked his answer that he had to my question. I appreciated the listing of different associations and organizations and things that he was either adding that have already been established or looking to create. So I was even just happy that he was open about sharing that and was providing resources. I also do appreciate his willingness to go to different schools and have this whole listening tour to listen to student voices, because that's my main concern, these schools not leaving space for student voices.
We learned that one of our PS Weekly reporters had a unique connection to past efforts to include student voices in the classroom.
In 10th grade, I was actually a part of the Chancellor's advisory council. It was very interesting. We just ate pizza and talked and made videos. As a student who was actually on the council myself, I felt like it was just more of one of those things that's hey, I have this, opposed to let's actually utilize these skills. Because there was kids from all types of different schools, and we created curriculums, we created this, we created that, and I've never seen them implemented. I've never seen anyone ever talk about it besides the people in the group. Because I made a good few videos. I made a good few social emotional learning curriculums and said what we wanted to include. But what does that do if it has no reach?
To your point, Armion, I think that the good thing about this listening tour is, in going to schools, is that hopefully he will be going to schools and hearing students' individual voices, because there is cases when there's things like biases that you can't get from just an overall review.
My name is Jeremiah Dickerson. I'm a student at Williamsburg Charter High School in Brooklyn, and I kind of wanted to pick your brain on AI policies in schools. For me as a student in Gen Z, I know that if something is taken away from us, we're just going to find another way to access what was taken away,
Fair.
So I kind of want to pick your brain and see, what stance do you think schools should be taking right now on AI policies?
Yeah, it's a big one. AI is something that's causing a lot of fear, but we can't be crippled by that fear. I do believe there are responsible ways to use AI tools. I do believe that AI tools can serve in ways to accelerate learning, to accelerate and make our teachers' work more efficient. And so we ought to be looking and thinking about how do we work with and use AI tools. And quite frankly, you all are using it anyway, right? And so we are thinking, and we'll be releasing soon, our first essentially draft on guidance on AI, and which will trigger a 45-day period of feedback on that, because I think, and we're going to be clear around what tools are there, but we do think that we have to be able to look at what the potential benefits are, because we see, especially when it comes to who need interventions, there might be opportunities there.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for answering that question with such transparency. feel like I was satisfied with his answer, especially with his like introductory statement where he said to me basically that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be crippled by fear when it comes to AI. Because I feel like personally a lot of like older teachers in my school, they're like, it's a divide where some teachers are like, hey, like we need to like flat out ban it. And some teachers and staff and administrators are like, hey, like, why don't we find ways to teach students how to use this collaboratively and actually use this in ways where we can prepare them for a world that works collaboratively with AI.
Even though it wasn't a concrete policy, he did have, here is the next step. We're coming out with our first draft of guidance on AI for schools. That felt pretty satisfactory for me, especially since he is so new and he probably can't tell us more details. But the idea of having something that, is going to be worked on, I thought that was really great. And I understand maybe why he couldn't say more specifics.
Since our conversation with the Chancellor, that new AI policy he mentioned has come out. It's a bit complicated, but essentially, potential uses by teachers with AI in the classroom have been put into traffic light categories. So, approved uses are considered green light cases, unapproved uses are red light cases, and situations that would require supervision are yellow light cases. For example, brainstorming for lesson plans is a green light case, and crisis intervention is an example of a red light case. Translating materials for a bilingual student is a yellow light case. Whether or not students are allowed to use AI is still being discussed by the DOE. Our reporters had mixed feelings about these guidelines.
I just think that it's interesting because they're recommending certain uses, but of course then there are all of these big tech companies that want to partner with the DOE. I think that's an important point. At STI, you're not really allowed to use any AI. I know, at least in our English department, if you use it at any point in the process, so that would be brainstorming, outlining, writing, revising, you'll get a 0 on the assignment. You'll have a meeting with your teacher, the assistant principal of the department, and your parents. So they take it really seriously. So I don't really think that we'll be affected by this guidance.
I just feel like the timing is pretty interesting because I know in my AP Calc class, we just started using AI. Like our teacher assigns AI on this thing called Glimmer, where you get to chat this AI to finish every assignment and every question. It's if you're confused, you have to ask it, and then once you solve it, you have to ask, is this all right? And then I'll go through all these unnecessary steps on so you spend hours on it. It was just I don't know, it was just kind of interesting that now there's this whole these AI rules, and just as teachers started to incorporate it, because I guess AI has blown up a lot.
I guess something that surprised me was that it was more centered around restrictions on staff and teachers rather than students, because I thought it would be mostly students can use it as a support but not to do their assignments for them. I thought it would be more about that rather than teachers can use it as a shortcut for translation and organizing data and whatever else. So I guess that was my takeaway.
That's all for today on this episode of PS Weekly. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with the Chancellor and each other. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our bonus episode from last season, where our student reporters interviewed the previous Chancellor, Melissa Aviles Ramos. And be sure to look out for the next episode of Season 3 of PS Weekly, where one of our reporters investigates a student movement advocating for increased diversity at Hunter College High School. PS Weekly is a collaboration between The Bell and Chalkbeat, made possible by generous support from the Pinkerton Foundation. The PS Weekly reporters you heard in this episode are Raylene Laloy, Jeremiah Dickerson, Noah Salas Adam, Ermion Aaliyah Raymond, Jasper Mallorca, Mateo Tang O'Reilly, Roberto Bailey, and Zoe George. Our senior producer for the show is Maria Robin Somerville, and our technical director is Jake Loomis. Executive editors are Amy Zimmer and Taylor McGraw. Additional production and reporting support was provided by Mira Gordon, Sabrina Duquesne, Caitlin Melville, our friends at Chalkbeat, and me, Zana Halili. Music is from APM and Blue Dot Sessions, and the jingle you heard at the beginning of this episode was created by the one and only Erica Wong.